Welcome back to the Marketing Quacks podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Dozer, and if you're new to the show, the mission here is to expose the quacks and gimmicks in the marketing industry while presenting some great marketers and entrepreneurs along the way. So in this episode, I'm excited to welcome our guest, Adam Viet. Adam is the Director of Growth and Development at P3 Uplift in Des Moines, Iowa. Adam, sorry if I butchered your last name there again, but thanks so much for joining the show.
All good. You got it right. So yeah, I appreciate you having me. Excited to chat today, Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we dive in, Adam and I first connected, I believe it was over AI, if I remember correctly. And then you shared your story about your previous marketing agency experience. So that resonated with me quite a bit. So I wanted to have you join the show. So I appreciate your time here.
Yep. Anytime, my man.
Yeah. So let's do a quick intro on who you are and what you do with P3.
For sure. So as the Director of Growth and Development, I actually launched a new model of recruiting at P3 called Recruitment Process Outsourcing. More of a solutions-based or project-based recruiting model compared to a typical model, which is called staff augmentation. And so have been trying to grow that. And actually, we integrated our sales function about 6 months ago. We also have a software development arm of our business. So I've been actually connecting with a lot of startups, a lot of small businesses and founders to help them and really advise them on their growth as far as their team goes, but as well as software goes. Technology is obviously a big part of the majority of startups and companies out there at this time these days. So really advising and helping with our teammates, with our experienced developers there within those companies.
Yeah, that's great. So let's talk about your past experience with marketing. I was very, curious to hear about your story when you told me about your previous agency experience. I want to hear you talk a little bit about that and what you learned from it.
Absolutely. So me and one of my really good friends, Richard Didor, shout out to Richard. He's has been in marketing his whole life. We met at UNI. He was actually in the communications department. He did a feature for me on one of the basketball programs for a game, and really hit it off, during that interview. And we stayed connected. He moved to Kansas City, moved to New York, moved back to Iowa, now currently in California, but had consistently stayed connected, kind of had that same mindset of, we always are kind of thinking, what's next in our life? What can we do to kind of push the needle with ourselves professionally and personally? And, we started talking. He's obviously, like I said, in the marketing field a lot more than I am. But, as far as my experience, the growth portion of that, really, I would say coupled well with his experience in the marketing field. So we launched, a marketing agency, and that honestly lasted about 3 years. Did a lot of social networks, social media work, some video work for some really cool companies around here, and outside Des Moines and Iowa. One of the coolest, I would say one of the coolest projects we did was with a musician who was launching, I can't remember if it was her very first album or one of her first albums. And so really, marketing around her as a person, as a musician. And so that was a cool project. But yeah, so really, really small, to be honest. We didn't really have a lot of large customers by any means. But, you asked the question what I learned. I learned so much doing that. My first business, Richard's first business. So, kind of the boring stuff, the financials, the taxes and all that good stuff. Learned a lot doing that. But also learned a lot about relationships with customers, relationships with clients. Honestly helped me a lot in my professional career outside of that agency. Also within that, just kind of progressing with those relationships and saying, hey, you hear about it all the time. Sometimes you got to fire customers. Sometimes you got to fire clients. And we did that a couple times. And with a small agency, with a startup, that's hard, because that's revenue coming in. That's money for you coming in that,
For sure.
Is not worth your time, to be honest. And, that's one of the biggest lessons that I took away from that venture was that, hey, these people are right that say sometimes you got to fire some of your customers to make things better moving forward. So, that's kind of a long-winded answer. I learned a ton. However, those 2 or 3 things are probably top of mind that come, when you ask that question of what did you learn within that agency.
I was going to follow up and ask what your biggest challenges were out of that experience. And I think from what you just said, it was probably firing that client. I've never actually gone through the experience of formally firing a client. Now, there are some that I was on edge with and I wanted to fire. And the reason being is it's a mental block. You're so focused on that client when in reality, they're not, the majority of your revenue to begin with, but you're mentally so focused on that client and they are just bugging you and urging you so much that you can't divert focus to what actually matters in growing the business. So sometimes firing clients is the best route.
100%. And you mentioned it, Ryan, it affects your other work. And that's not a good thing. That's not what clients are supposed to do. You should be able to do the work in each specific client without saying, hey, I'm doing work here, but I'm always thinking about this client. I suppose sometimes that happens when you have a bigger customer that, hey, maybe it's paying you a lot more than everybody else. But at the same time, you don't want that to happen because of something negative, like they're bugging you at all hours of the day. Nothing's good enough. You're not doing the work that you promised, or those types of things that sometimes get thrown around.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was going to ask you, what were some of your biggest wins? You mentioned that musician. Was there another big win that you had that you want to share?
Yeah. So, we had a lot of wins there. I think the coolest work we did was probably for the least amount of money. Just these founders that are starting off and, hey, I need some marketing. I don't have the most money in the world to pay a marketer. We took those on, and whether good or bad, you look back at it and, hey, we only lasted 3 years. Maybe that was some of the reasons why, because we kind of took some projects on that maybe weren't making us the most money. However, it lit a fire with myself and Richard that, hey, we're helping these people when really nobody else would. And so, I would say not many, not a specific answer, but, some of those people, some of those founders that were just getting going had a passion for what they did and came to us and said, hey, we need help. We don't have the funds to pay, somebody, a big marketing firm. Will you help us? We said yes. And I still think back to that. Richard and I still talk about that and say that was pretty cool work, and pretty fun for us as well.
Yeah, I've taken on those projects before too, and I know exactly what you're talking about there. So I want to talk about your new podcast a little bit. Last time we talked, you mentioned you had a podcast you were starting up. I'm not sure how far down the rabbit hole you are in that yet. Talk about your new podcast and kind of what you hope to accomplish from it.
Yeah, so the Leadership Lounge is the name of the
Leadership
podcast.
Lounge, okay.
Yeah, I have not released any episodes yet. I've recorded 3 or 4. Have about 6 more guests to record before I think I will release those. It'll be on a weekly basis, but as the title kind of says, I talk to area leaders and really outside the area about their leadership, about their how they go about leadership. Myself, that interests me a lot. I love leading teams. I love training individuals, helping them along their path to becoming successful. So on a personal level, selfishly, I love talking to these people, but I know that there's a lot of people out there. I know that there's not a lot of leadership, training, you might say. I've been a part of many companies. I've recruited and worked with many other companies that, hey, you become a leader because you're a good individual contributor. And that's why. And that's not the best reason to become a leader. And a lot of people maybe don't have the best, I know they don't have the best training. However, just because you're a good individual contributor does not mean you can be a good leader. And I hope that aspiring leaders, I hope that brand new leaders, some even experienced leaders can learn something from that. It's really been awesome recording these episodes because, as I mentioned, I have about 3 or 4 recorded already, and I've learned so much. And I just think that, the listeners are going to learn a lot from different individuals, from different leaders in different industries who have a different perspective, on leadership. Out of a couple of the guests I've recorded with already, one is a brand new startup leader, the founder of a startup. The other is the CFO at a very large company here in Des Moines. So, you get both ends of the spectrum there. And so I think it's going to be, a good learning session, hopefully weekly, here coming up soon for those aspiring leaders and even some experienced leaders as well.
No, that's cool. I'll definitely have to give that a listen. I like the mission that you have there. And selfishly, it's really cool to gain that knowledge from those types of people where people love a good podcast
Yeah,
interview, bro. That's what I've learned. If you ask someone to be on their podcast, it's a huge ego stroke and they'll be like, oh, absolutely. And they'll give you any time of the day. So
100%.
I'm excited to listen to that for you for sure. So let's transition to AI a little bit. That's how we first connected was over AI. Talk to me about how you're using AI in any of your day-to-day operations, whether it's for recruiting, podcasting, content creation, etc. Are there any tools you're using? I guess, let me just hear your perspective on AI right now.
For sure. So I use Grok quite often on X.
Over ChatGPT Plus, use Grok?
So I do use ChatGPT. Grok really answers my questions for me. Content creation, hey, here's this article. Can you summarize it for me? That's usually ChatGPT. And so I use both. I would say just with Grok answering questions for me, I use that I use that probably more. I am on X quite a bit as well, so that's just an easy transition for me. As far as how I use it, outside what I just mentioned, maybe in the professional side of things, that content creation, it is huge. In the recruiting industry, AI has been used for quite a while. Just maybe one example is that, hey, you're at a bigger company. I've worked at these companies prior. They have a job opening. They get 350 resumes. AI goes through those, compares it to the job description, and then gives those resumes a grade. A, B, C, D, F. So AI has been doing that for a while. Now, I will say that, they out in the world, a lot of people say AI is rejecting my resume. No, that's typically not happening. There's typically a person doing that. And even those resumes that get those A, B, and C grades, I, the recruiter, am going through those and saying, okay, yes, this is an A, or hey, this isn't a C, this looks like an A, and going through those. So there is a little human touch there. However, I think that AI is going to revolutionize the recruiting world, and really even the job search world, to be honest, Ryan. I have a couple ideas and have a couple connections that are going to be doing some really cool things within the job search field. And I know that there are people out there who have done this, tools out there that have done this that don't really write your resume for you, but hey, I copy and paste my resume into ChatGPT and say, hey, my last 3 roles, can you match these up more to this job description? And so I think while I think there's a lot of people in the recruiting industry specifically that are hesitant to use it or implement it because of the fact that, that's probably one of the industries, if not the top industry, that people are saying it's going to take everybody's job away. So I think there's some hesitancy there, but, I think it's just going to make, the more you know how to use it, the better you know how to use it, the more efficient you're going to be as a recruiter, as a hiring manager, as an HR professional. So I'm excited about it. I have just baseline knowledge on a lot of AI tools, a lot of AI things, but being a part of groups that I am a part of, learning every day. As it's consistently changing, and there are consistently more tools out there that you can use. So it's an exciting field for sure.
Yeah, it never ends, bro. There's a
Never.
new tool here, new tool there, new update, et cetera, et cetera. What are your thoughts on AI tools to write resumes or cover letters or those types of things? I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
For sure. I mean, I think it can be a super efficient tool. I'm not a big fan of cover letters, and so honestly, if I'm
not either,
yeah, if I'm applying to jobs and they require a cover letter, I'm throwing something in an AI tool and saying write a cover letter for me, because I don't. There's an objective on your resume, or there should be an objective on your resume that essentially should be your cover letter. So I don't know if AI tools are there yet that they can completely write your resume. However, like I mentioned, I do think they're there where you copy paste your job descriptions within an AI tool and say, hey, make these sound more professional, make these sound more XYZ, whatever it is. And I think they can do that. And so there is some efficiency that can be had writing a resume, updating, or even making a resume look more professional or better.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I actually saw a video, I think this was a couple weeks ago, of someone going through a first round of interviews, and what they were doing, I believe it was GBT Vision, they were recording the audio, where you've probably seen something similar to
Yes.
this, where the interviewer would ask a question, AI would take that question, paste it, and then generate a response based on the input that the interviewee gave him,
Hmm.
and was reading it word for word off the screen back to the recruiter. And the recruiter's like, wow, that was actually a good response. So I'm like, what are your thoughts on stuff like that? People that are faking it with AI.
Yeah. Obviously, I don't condone that stuff. However, it's going to happen, right? Like that's part of there's positives and negatives to AI. That's part of the negative. I think that's going to drastically cut down the video interview stuff, and or there's going to have to be some type of uh, the video interview, whether it's software, whatever it is going to have to be able to say, hey, you don't have any other windows open, or hey, he or she doesn't have any AI windows open.
You could probably track eye movement too. If someone's like reading a screen and then
Yeah.
replying back to you, there's other ways to
Yep.
decipher it.
Yeah, and as a recruit, I've been recruiting for 12 years, Ryan, and I've seen some stuff like that. An example is I had somebody who was on a video interview, and then they had their buddy who was sitting right next to them out of camera view, listening to the questions, and then they would hit mute, a little bit after the question, and then their buddy would tell them what to say, and then they said it. And so it's just honestly a progression of stuff like that. But I think there's
Fake it till you make it, bro.
I guess so. Yeah, or fake it till you get on the job and then get fired, I guess. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's gonna, like I said, that's gonna happen. And it's just there's gonna have to be something that either tracks what other windows they have open, something like that. But yeah, that's gonna happen for sure.
That's a cool story. So let's end off the AI conversation here. I mean, what do you look into 2024? What is like a top trend or a couple top trends that you see AI going?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just there's just so much stuff out there that is cool, that's exciting. As far as a specific, like a trend, I don't know that there's one on the top of my head that I can say like, hey, I'm super excited about this. I just think overall, there's a lot of people that think negatively about AI, but I do think that it's just going to make so many more people more efficient, and it's going to progress companies that adopt it, that use it correctly, utilize it correctly. It's going to progress them so fast. And I truly do think that whether you're a large company, an enterprise company, or a startup, that, hey, I'm not using AI, you're going to fall behind, and it's going to be pretty quick. So I do think that, companies, large or small, who adopt it, that trend, I think we're going to see who does that, who doesn't, very, very quickly.
Yeah, there's always a correlation of people who, trash AI. They've also never used AI, right?
Correct.
That's a funny correlation there with how that works. So let's transition now to my favorite segment of the show, where we talk about marketing quacks. This is the Marketing Quacks podcast. So define a marketing quack for me, Adam. I mean, what are some marketing tricks and gimmicks that you see people do in your world?
Yeah, so one that I'm actually happy I get to talk to somebody else about this. One is when you create a LinkedIn post and you put 9 or 10 spaces in between your lines, just so people click on the see more. That really bugs me. That really bugs me. I know what they're doing, obviously. However, doing that, is something that kind of bugs me there. Cold outreach, and then trying to pitch me in my DMs, whether it be on X, whether it be on LinkedIn, specifically for your recruiting services or for your software development services. When I work for a recruiting service in a software development company, that's another one. What else did I have on here? Yeah, and honestly, that's probably the big one, or excuse me, the biggest one is the cold outreach with that. Actually, one more now that I think about it, the follow and unfollow, the tactic where, hey, I'm gonna follow this person and then unfollow and then follow again so they see my name. I don't know if that works for other people, but it definitely does not work for me. So stop doing that too.
I see that all the time on X. That's a huge thing.
Yes, huge thing.
One of mine, you mentioned LinkedIn. I was talking to Andrew Holland. This was a week ago. He's a big SEO guy. He's got a huge LinkedIn following. His big quack was the slide decks. Do you see like on LinkedIn, when you see people post these slide decks with the most basic comment or content? And I was like, Andrew, the biggest one for me is when people say like Chat GPT killers or 5 AI tools that you've never heard of. Check this out. And it's like all these 5 basic tools. I'm like, this is the most clickbait shit that I've ever seen, but people get away with it. Yep. And they probably buy likes and comments, to be honest with you, because I know a person with common sense would not like or comment on that.
Right. 100%. And I have seen those that, hey, like you said, the 5 most uncommon or not well-known AI tools, and OpenAI and ChatGPT are the first one on there. It's like, all right, what are we doing here?
Yeah. So that's great. So any final notes, Adam, on just recruiting, marketing advice, AI, anything we talked about here that you want to share for the audience?
Yeah. I think that, we talk about kind of obviously the Marketing Quacks podcast here, having a network, growing your network, having those individuals in your corner can be marketing for you, right? Like whether that be, hey, I'm looking for a new job, I need a network to find that new job. It can be the same thing with marketing, right? Like, hey, I'm a founder, I grow my network to X number, and these people all genuinely care about me. That can be your marketing. And it's free marketing. Word of mouth is free most times. And so I think that there's a lot of, obviously you're in the industry. I was in the industry as far as advertising marketing, but there's a lot of ways to get customers, but having that network and cultivating that network is such a big deal. Marketing, and on my end too, job searching and recruiting and stuff like that as well. So that's what I would leave your listener base with is, hey, plenty of tools to do marketing, plenty of tools that can be a success in your marketing for your company. But I would not forget about your network and growing that network, and really making those relationships with either customers or new people in the industry in the area.
No, that's great advice. And I will say too, from experience, that referrals are often the best leads and the best quality of customers and clients that you will get anyways. Anytime you do cold outreach, whether LinkedIn X or just email, whatever your cold outreach tactics are, 90% of those people you don't even want to work with anyways. It's just going for the quick dollar, hoping they pay, and then on to the next one, on to the next one, on to the next one. It's like these people on top just trying to get as much out of their bottom line as possible with that approach. So I really appreciate you saying that. So, that's really it. I mean, where can people find you online here?
Yeah, so I spend most times on LinkedIn and X, and I am Adam Viet, V-I-E-T. You search that on LinkedIn. I think there's only one of me last time I checked. And on X, it's Adam Viet, my first and last name, DSM. And yeah, I would love to connect with anybody, talk more about this, talk more about recruiting, AI, whatever that might be. But yeah, those 2 areas are where I spend most of my time.
Well, perfect. Adam, thank you so much again for joining the Marketing Quacks podcast. It's been great having you.
Thanks, Ryan.